Hey everybody, recently I said I was going to do a Q&A video, so I collected a bunch of your questions from a couple of videos and we're going to go through them now. I have no idea how long this is going to be, and I'm also not used to talking directly into the webcam. I'm normally used to doing the podcast where I'm looking off to the side at one of the monitors, so I'll do my best to do a good job of that and just bear with me. Also, it's early in the morning, so a lot of you seem to notice on videos that my voice sounds different depending on what time of day I record stuff, so if it sounds weird, sorry about that. This first question is one I have gotten probably 150 times, and I haven't answered till now, and I'm kind of sorry that I haven't done an in-depth answer. Initially, I was surprised at how many people asked, and I thought it was just like a flash-in-the-pan thing, but nope, people really want to know, so let's talk about it. Are you going to be making the Potato Masher version 2 for the PS4.5 or 4K? And I've been asked this question like in a bunch of different variations. Am I going to upgrade the Potato Masher? Am I going to build a new one? Etc., etc. So, short answer is no. I'm not going to be upgrading the Potato Masher, and the reason is simple. The PS4 sold like 40 million units, and most of those people are not going to go out and buy a PS4K or Neo or whatever it's going to be called. We'll just call it the Neo for now. They're not going to run out and buy one. I mean, they'll probably sell millions of units, but it's not going to be most people doing it. So I want to keep the Potato Masher competing against the original PS4 because that was the original challenge. Now, will I build a new Potato Masher to compete against the Neo, a completely separate device? Maybe. It depends on what price it is. We don't even know what the performance is really going to be for the Neo. There's lots of rumors, but there's not a lot confirmed. Hopefully, within the next couple weeks, we find something out at E3, and then I can talk about this a little more in depth. But until it actually releases and I can get my hands on one to test, like if a friend buys one or something, I'm not going to know if there's even that big of a difference in performance. I don't think there's going to be as big of a difference as a lot of people think there is, just because a PS4 is fairly small, and to get the heat dissipation that you would need for a super powerful card into a PS4 would require making it bigger. It'd probably require a better power delivery system than that skinny little cord. It could require a lot of different things. So I don't think Sony's going to be like jamming a GTX 970 equivalent or a RX 480 equivalent into a PS4 and selling it. I think it's more likely we're going to see like a 10 to 15% bump in performance. So if it's say $400 or something and it is a decent bump in performance, I might look into building a second Potato Masher. That kind of depends on how Patreon and the channel are doing. Because buying a new PS4 and building a completely new computer and any changes I have to make in the testing procedures to do that, it's going to be pretty time consuming. I'm pretty excited about the idea if it is like a new, faster PS4. I think that's really cool, but I'm only going to buy one to test if it's a significant difference. If it's like a 10% performance difference, honestly, it may not be any better than the Potato Masher as it is now. If it's like 15 or 20%, yeah, it could definitely be a difference. Personally, what I'm hoping for the PS4K is that it plays 4K Blu-rays, it's full HDMI 2.2 compatible, HDCP, everything needed to play 4K content from Netflix, from Amazon, 4K Blu-rays, all that stuff. That would be awesome if it can do that. And then if it's like another 10-15% performance bump, really all I want is 60 FPS and more games from the PS4, or a locked 30 FPS in 1080p, like any game where there is variable performance, which on the PS4 is a lot of them. There's a lot of 900p games. There's a lot of games that should be 60 that are running at 30. And if those could all be like a locked stable FPS, if those could all be 1080p minimum, if more of them could be 60 FPS, I'd be totally happy with that. I don't think gaming at 4K is realistic on a box that small unless they're selling it for a crazy amount of money, and I don't think most people care, honestly. Even with the 4K TV, I think a good solid 1080p image is still going to look great, and if they try to game at 4K, in most games I think the performance is going to be significantly compromised. As somebody who games on a 4K monitor, I'm actually thinking about stepping down to a 1440p monitor so I can do higher refresh rate gaming, and it takes a ton of GPU power to max everything out at 60 FPS, so for PS4 I don't think it's that realistic. Now, to have some fun, let's talk about how I would upgrade the Potato Masher if I was going to go that route. So let's say the PS4K is $400. That's completely a guess. I have no insider information. Let's say that GameStop gives you $200 in trade-in towards your PS4. I think that's probably a little generous because you'll have a lot of people trying to trade theirs in. So I think it'd probably be closer to like $150 just knowing GameStop. But let's say maybe Sony is subsidizing, kind of upgrades or something. And let's say they give you $200. So if you're going to spend $200 out of pocket on top of your PS4 trade-in to get a PS4K. What could we do with $200 in the Potato Masher? And this is why I don't really want to do this, because it's not even close to fair. PCs are built to be upgraded. So with the PS4K or Neo, I'm just going to call it the Neo, you have to buy the power supply and the controller and the case and all the cooling fans, and every single part of the system has to be purchased again. On the PC, we really only need to buy a new graphics card, and I'd probably also buy a Hyper 212 so I can overclock the processor to like 4 gigahertz. But let's say we sell the GTX 760 for $50, which is way cheap. I could definitely sell it for more than that. But let's say I put it on eBay with a $50 buy it now. It's gone in like an hour. So let's say I have $250 to spend on a graphics card. Well, I could grab one of those new AMD RX 480s that's just been announced, because those sound like absolute beasts for $200. I could buy a used GTX 780. Those are going for about $200. I could maybe get a 970. Definitely for $250, I could get a 970. So let's say I want to get a Hyper 212. So I have money left over after getting the Hyper 212, maybe $220, and I could probably get a 970 for that amount, or an R9 290, something like that. So that would be a massacre. Like, I don't care how good the PS4K is. If they're selling it for $400, it's not going to be that good. It's not going to be 970 good, RX 480 good. I just can't see a world in which it's physically possible for Sony to sell a console that good for that price, without AMD also coming out with like monster chips for $100 they're selling to the general public. I'm not saying it won't happen. I have no insider information. I read the same blogs everybody else does. I would just be very, very surprised. So that's a very long answer to a question I've got a bunch of times. I'm sorry it took me that long to answer it, but let's move on to the rest of the questions now. What app do you use for recording? Also, if it's only for your GPU, what's the best for other GPUs? So for most games now on my personal computer, I think that's what he was asking. On my personal computer, I use NVIDIA's Shadowplay most of the time because it's just so convenient. I can record 4K 60 FPS, 135 megabit video, like with a 1 to 2 FPS performance hit. So that's pretty awesome. I don't like how it handles the mic. I don't like that it can't do separate audio tracks, a few other things, but it's really convenient. And then when I need separate audio tracks, when I need a little more customization, I use DxTory, which is what I used to use back in the day for absolutely everything. And it's a lot more performance intensive, but I can run multiple audio tracks. I can choose my codecs, choose my resolution, all kinds of stuff like that. So it's a pretty great program. I recommend it if you need all those options. Now, to record Potato Masher videos, I use an Elgato Game Capture HD60. I don't use any software on the Potato Masher itself because I don't want to affect the performance of the computer when I'm recording the computer playing games. So the Game Capture HD60 is just a HDMI capture card. It's plugged into my main computer, and it just intercepts the monitor signal coming from the Potato Masher and records it. And since it's HDMI, it can record audio at the same time. So that's what I use for the Potato Masher and the PS4. So they're being recorded the exact same way, so the footage is as close to the same as I can make it. Where do you think the gaming industry is heading? Do you think there will be a crash? And what is your all-time favorite game? So I don't think there's going to be a crash. I think there's more money being spent on video games than at any point in history, as far as I know. So I don't think we're going to have a crash, but I think gaming's definitely going to be different in 10 years than it is now. Just like it's different now than it was 10 years ago. Anybody who was gaming back in like the PS2 Xbox days, or even like the N64 PlayStation 1 days, remembers that you didn't get game updates all the time. Games came out and they were pretty much just done. So there's a lot more of a concept of like a living game now, where people can put it out and they can fix issues, they can take community suggestions and improve the game, and they can fix terrible things they shouldn't have left in the game when they released it. They can do all that stuff, which is good in theory. I think it's used as a crutch a lot of the time when publishers are trying to rush a game out the door, not giving the developer time to fully finish it. But yeah, I don't think there's going to be a crash. I think gaming will just be different than it is today. So that might mean a big publisher goes away, like a THQ who's not around anymore. That could mean that, maybe Sony or Microsoft wouldn't be making a console 10 years from now. Maybe somebody else will be making a console. Maybe Apple will. I hope that doesn't happen. Maybe Steam will actually make a physical gaming console, ignoring Steam boxes, which didn't really work out. So there's a lot of things that could happen. I don't really know. Which way I think it's heading, I think VR might actually have a shot this time. I don't know about the Vive and the Oculus Rift first-gen models. I don't feel like there's enough AAA support. There's lots of like Oculus and Vive specific games, but For me, I don't really want to spend the money to get into VR until pretty much every game I play is going to be supported by it, because it's a very expensive peripheral. It's at least as expensive as a top tier graphics card, so I don't really want to do that unless it's going to be cheap. I kind of hope the PSVR gets Windows driver support at some point, because Sony has said that it is technically possible. They're just focusing on actually finishing and releasing it right now, which is understandable. But I think that would be really awesome because it's cheap. It's the cheapest right now, and it probably will work pretty decently. Whether or not Sony ends up supporting it for their games, which I have strong doubts about because it's Sony and they have a history of doing this, the unit itself looks like it could be really awesome, especially as kind of an entry-level VR experience. So I kind of hope that really takes off, because I think the promise of VR is really cool. And what is my all-time favorite game? That is a hard question to answer. It kind of depends on like favorite game for what situation, because like me and my brothers have been playing Age of Empires 2 together since 2001, 2002. So that game kind of has like a special place in my heart, because that's something me and my brothers do together, and we don't have a lot else in common. The Witcher 3 is probably my favorite game of the past 5 or 6 years. One of the first games I ever played when I built my first actual gaming desktop, like my own desktop that wasn't a laptop or like a hand-me-down family computer. I built it in 2008, and I started playing The Witcher, and then I kind of stopped playing it after a couple hours, and I came back to it when they released the Enhanced Edition, because it fixed a ton of things with the game. And I really, really enjoyed that, got into the books, played all the other games, so The Witcher has been like a big part of my gaming life, and The Witcher 3 is without a doubt one of the best games I've ever played. So The Witcher 3 is probably up there. Half-Life 2, that's kind of an easy answer a lot of people would make. I have a lot of good memories of Battlefield 2 and DayZ, of playing with friends. Battlefield Bad Company 2, same thing. Yeah, I don't really have like a favorite game. I can easily do top 10 lists for movies, games, music, things like that. But I'm not really good at picking one single favorite thing. So if I had to say what's my favorite game I've played in like the last 5 or 6 years, it would definitely be The Witcher 3. It's everything I've ever wanted in a big RPG, and it's in one of my favorite fantasy universes. So I think that's a really amazing game if you're into that sort of thing. I know it's kind of big, and a lot of people haven't gotten past a certain point because it's so daunting, which I definitely agree with, but I really like it. Next question, do you think the potato masher will make it the whole life cycle? Yes, I think it'll still definitely be working at the end of the PS4's life cycle. Will it still be able to play every game? Also, I think yes for the most part, but if you remember at the end of the PS3 and Xbox 360 generation, games were running at like 5 or 600p and like sub 30 FPS a lot of the time. Not every game, but a lot of games. Standards that people really wouldn't accept on a PC most of the time, people were okay with on the 360 and the PS3. I remember playing Grand Theft Auto 5 launch week, and man, the aliasing was so bad. I don't even know what resolution that game was running at, but it was horrible. And the frame rate was definitely in the low 20s when I was driving around town. So like it ran absolutely terribly. So I think the PS4 will definitely get to that point by the end of its life cycle if graphics keep progressing the way they are. And I think the Potato Masher will follow along with it. So I think it'll still be playing games. It's just absolutely going to suck compared to like the current high-end or mid-range computers that are being built and played on at the time. But I think it is going to make it the entire way, unless technology changes drastically in a way where we can't predict. But I don't even know what that would be, because I have no idea what might happen. But unless like VRAM requirements skyrocket to 6 gigabytes minimum for all games in the next couple years, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. Like I put 8 gigs of RAM into my gaming computer in 2009, and it wasn't necessary for gaming until I would say like mid 2015 is when I started seeing more games than Potato Masher that were starting to max out the RAM. So, I think you can upgrade to really high-end hardware, but you may not need it for years to come, like actually need it. You might like it because it makes games better, but it may not be 100% necessary for the game to function for a while. So I think that's kind of how the Potato Masher is going to go. It'll work, it'll just suck by a lot of people's standards, just like the PS4 will. Next question, what do you think about the new NVIDIA and AMD GPUs? Will you buy one? This person left this comment before AMD dropped the RX 480 on us, so I'll start there. I think the RX 480 is awesome. I have classically been a bit of an AMD fanboy, and I would really like to see them be pretty competitive again. I think they always are competitive, but people have this mentality that if they aren't absolutely trouncing Nvidia for the price, then they're falling behind just because Nvidia is bigger, and that's kind of how popularity works. But I think AMD's always had some really great options. I had the 7950, which is a beast of a card. Then I ran two 7950s, which is a terrible decision because Crossfire sucks, as it does SLI. Then I sold both of them because the Litecoining craze started, so I sold both cards for more than I paid for them, and then moved to a 770, and then I moved from a GTX 770 to an R9 290, which was an absolute beast of a card, and I would probably still be running it if I hadn't upgraded to 4K, but it was an absolutely awesome card, and I really liked it. So I think the new RX 480, if it delivers on the performance AMD is talking about, has the potential to be a little bit of like a disruptor, unless Nvidia drops like the GTX 1060 or something, which is comparable in performance. But for now, being able to get 8 gigs of VRAM for $230 or $240 and getting like GTX 970 to 980 performance for $200 brand new, that's pretty awesome. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what Nvidia has to counter that. And as far as the new NVIDIA GPUs, I think the 1070 and the 1080 were a little better than a lot of people were expecting, me included. They look like they're pretty awesome. I haven't personally got to play with one yet. My friend Dave, the not so evil Viking 13, has ordered a 1080, so when he gets his, I'll probably go over and check it out. But I'm considering stepping down from 4K to 1440p so I can get higher frame rates, and if I do that, I might just stick with my 980 Ti for a while. I'm not really in a hurry. Like, it's still a great card, even though new cards are out and they're faster. I'm still enjoying it, so I'll probably stick with it for a while, at least until the 1080 Ti comes out and we see how well that performs. Do you think you can do a full Arma 3 review on the Potato Masher, like a full-on King of the Hill server on high settings? I don't really like King of the Hill that much, so I don't think I'll do that. But I could potentially do a full Arma 3 review now that it has the new renderer. That would be a good time to do it. And what I probably would do is just use that computer when I play with Wraith Squad, which is the Casual Shenanigans Gaming Podcast's kind of unofficial Arma team. It's run by Evil Viking 13. He makes a lot of missions. We do some community workshop missions. We do all kinds of stuff, and we run ops about once a week. So I would probably just, instead of using my main computer, I would hook my headset and everything up to the Potato Masher and then just record some footage of a few of those, because we host our own server, so that would reduce server lag and the terrible server FPS you get a lot of the times in these King of the Hill servers, and you'd be able to see how the Potato Masher can actually run the game in a pretty complicated multiplayer mission. We still run pretty demanding missions, and people's FPS still does crater some of the time depending on what's going on. So I might do that. If people would be interested in that, just leave a comment below. Not too many people have asked about Arma 3, or they ask about stuff like Altus Life, which I'm not really interested in reviewing because that's not the type of Arma I personally enjoy. What kind of issues do you run into with the Potato Masher, if any? No issues, really. I only use it for testing games, and it used to host our Minecraft server and our Arma 3 server. We since moved those over to my Plex server. So now it really only records games for the time being, and it runs great. Other than having like a slow boot up because there's no SSD, everything works fine. Like, I would like USB 3. I might like it to be a little bit smaller or a little bit quieter some of the time, but for a budget gaming PC, I think it works great. It doesn't blue screen, it never overheats, it doesn't have super bad noise issues, it's just not really quiet. So it's a great computer. I highly recommend you get one. Will it run Minecraft? If so, how well? I get this question a lot, and first, easy answer, yes, it'll absolutely run Minecraft. My cell phone can run Minecraft. Can it run Minecraft with like lots of shaders and graphical enhancements and things? Probably. And if it sounds like I'm kind of frustrated and don't want to make the video, I don't want to, just because there are much more demanding and I think interesting games to test from a graphics standpoint. But I probably will end up doing a Minecraft test at some point. I put on my Patreon that I would do that if I hit $1,000 per video. And I did that kind of as a joke because I don't expect to hit that like anytime soon, if ever. And if I did hit $1,000 per video, I will put a giant smile on my face and I will review it. Will you be surprised if the Potato Masher doesn't last for the duration you want it to? This is a little bit similar to the question I answered a few minutes ago, but it's asking if I will be surprised. Yes, I will be surprised. I think it is going to last. Now, I don't really know how long the PS4's life cycle is going to be. So like if they say they're supporting it till 2022 or something, then I'm a little iffy. But assuming that we get the PS5 in like 2019 or 2020, I think it'll definitely last that long. What game do you think has more advantage on the Potato Masher than on the PS4? Most of them. Where are you from? I was born in New York, and then I moved south when I was like 2 weeks old, so I don't remember New York at all. And now I live on the eastern coast of the US, is about as close as I'll say. Somewhere between like South Carolina and Maryland, pretty close to the coast. What is the equal GPU of the Potato Mashers in the mobile GPU in performance? What mobile GPU is pretty equal to the Potato Masher's GPU? That's hard to say definitively because NVIDIA does this kind of irritating naming scheme where they'll take like the GTX 970 and then they'll make the GTX 970M, which is a mobile version, and it's nowhere near as fast as the 970, so you can't really compare them directly. So based on tests I've read and reviews I've read and all the videos I've watched, I'm actually kind of in the market for a workhorse laptop right now, so a lot of the ones I'm looking at do have mobile GPUs in them. And I think the GTX 960 or 970M is probably the closest. But again, that's not really a guarantee. But if I had to guess, I would say that's about as close as you could get in a real world basis. Now, like as far as teraflops and memory throughput and everything, it probably doesn't match spec for spec at all, but it seems to deliver about the same amount of performance. Do you suggest building a PC like the Potato Masher? How long will it last? I think everybody can build a PC like the Potato Masher if they want to, but I don't think it's the ideal solution for everybody because I don't think anything's the ideal solution for everybody. Every computer or console is a bit of a compromise between price and location, availability of parts, things like that. So I think the Potato Masher is a great option for somebody who is interested in PC gaming, interested in mods, wants to play with a mouse and keyboard, likes the robust chat support, likes PC exclusive games, but you're on a console-like budget. I think the Potato Masher is great, but you need to be willing to put a little extra time into research, into gathering parts, into waiting for a few sales, into putting it together. Like, it's definitely more work than going to pick up a PS4 and just plugging it in. But I think the experience is a lot more rewarding, but you may not. You may have different preferences and priorities than I do, and that's totally fine. And in that case, the Potato Masher might not be the ideal solution for you. I will always suggest saving up more money and building a nicer computer just because you can buy a higher end case and a higher end power supply and a few other things that you can take with you on your next build or on your next upgrade. So the Potato Masher, like, it has a lot of cheaper components in it just because it's a budget computer, and a lot of those may not last for a full 10 years, or they may not work as well as they did in 10 years. And if you can save up more money and spend more money, I think you should. But I think the sweet spot's probably like $600 or $700 if you can afford it. And if you can't, the Potato Masher is a pretty great option. How far up the GPU ladder do you think the Masher CPU could run? Are we talking a 280X or even a GTX 970? You did mention once about putting the 980 Ti in there just to see. I mention your channel to anyone who will listen. Well, thank you. So how good is the CPU? What he's asking is, will the CPU bottleneck a higher end graphics card? Because a lot of people are very skeptical about me using an older CPU like a i5 750, which it's been great so far. There's only been 1 or 2 games where it's gotten close to maxing out, and every processor can at some point. So I think it's doing great so far. I think it'll definitely go higher than a 280X. It might start bottlenecking around a 970 depending on the game. It would have to be a CPU heavy game. But yeah, I think I might put the 980 Ti in it at some point to do a test and see kind of how hard it bottlenecks it. It could be fun. Even if it bottlenecks it, the 980 Ti will still deliver crazy awesome performance compared to the GTX 760. I mean, it's well over twice as fast. It might be 3 times as fast. So I think it's definitely fun and worth doing. But I think the CPU probably will max out. So it matters less if it bottlenecks than if it bottlenecks before you're getting acceptable performance. So the reason the G3258 and the G4400 are not CPUs I would recommend is because they only have 2 cores and they have no hyperthreading. And in a lot of games, a lot of new games, they will bottleneck before you reach acceptable performance. So it's not like they're a bad processor to have for light video editing or for older games or when you're building a computer for your grandma or something like that. They probably are great. I mean, they are great, actually. I mean, I've seen plenty of people who are using them and having awesome results with it. But for gaming, it's not what I would recommend because it's going to bottleneck your GPU well before you get to acceptable performance in a lot of newer games. What are your future plans for the channel? Will you be stuck only on the Potato Masher videos? Well, I'm not stuck only on Potato Masher videos now. I do kind of compilations of the Casual Shenanigans crew playing GTA, and I have a Total War Attila series I'm doing with Evil Viking 13 right now. So I do make those, but they kind of fade into the background because they don't do nearly the views that the Potato Masher videos do. But yeah, I started this channel doing Let's Plays and tips videos and like graphics card reviews and just whatever, and a lot of it probably wasn't very good, and that's the reason why my channel didn't grow, but the Potato Masher is going very well, so I am spending a lot of time on that right now because I have tons and tons of videos I want to make for the Potato Masher, and I'm really limited by my time more than by my ideas. So future plans for the channel, I'm currently working on a fun Forza series with my friend Singularity 80. It's kind of like a Top Gear build challenge-esque thing where we take cars and do stupid things to them in Forza Horizon 2 and then race them against each other. That's just a fun little series. It should be coming in the next couple months. It's mostly recorded. I just need to finish editing it. And then I'm also working on ideas for an Arma campaign to play with Wraith Squad, which is the Casual Shenanigans Arma crew. So I want to play and edit those and make them kind of like really cinematic missions, and I'll probably upload them here. I've been considering doing a Dirt Rally series. I'm probably going to do one on the Casual Shenanigans channel because a bunch of us are in a Dirt Rally tournament with each other. But as far as this channel, I'd like to get into more game reviews, more hardware reviews if I could. I'd like to do some graphics optimization guides for games because a lot of what you see on the internet is pretty inaccurate, and it's people just quoting other people who did a terrible job testing, and I just feel like there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think Nvidia did an awesome job with their optimization guides they were publishing for a while, but they haven't done one in a few months, so I think maybe they thought it was too time consuming and they've stopped doing it. I haven't found any good answer about that, but there's lots of things I'd like to get into, but I want to make sure I'm doing the Potato Masher videos as good as I possibly can before I expand into too much else, and I've got a lot of Potato Masher videos to work on. What other older games are you planning on doing remaster videos on? Alright, so I have a list here. I've got a Google Doc running. Currently on the remaster list is Bad Company 2, the Batman trilogy, or the Arkham trilogy, Skyrim with a bunch of mods, Borderlands, Black Ops 1, Deus Ex Human Revolution, maybe Dirt 3, although Dirt Rally runs so well, I don't know why anyone wouldn't just buy that. Team Fortress 2, Black Mesa, Grand Theft Auto 4, Rage is a maybe, Dead Island, especially since they're coming out with remasters of those, I believe. The Mass Effect trilogy, BioShock Infinite, a few of the Stalker games, and maybe one or two others. So there definitely are a bunch of other games I want to do remaster videos on. It's just a matter of having enough of a gap in new releases to where I can spend some time working on an older release without missing any major game releases. Will you test any games from 2015 you couldn't before, such as Dying Light, Evolve, etc.? Well, it depends on how big of a community there is for those games, because I don't want to make a review for a game that nobody cares about anymore and isn't playing. Not because I want to get the most views for every video, but because I could be spending that time on a game that more people are interested in, and that's probably a better use of my time, since I'm more limited by like my time and budget than I am by the number of games out there, because there are, tons of games. So I'll probably focus on things that more people are interested in, which is why I tend to focus on newer releases. But Dying Light is definitely on the list, because a lot of people have asked about it. And also on that list, I want to test The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, which I missed doing a test on. I might test Dead Rising 3 at some point. I want to do Watch Dogs if I am able to get around to it at some point. I think that would be a lot of fun. League of Legends, Dota 2, a few of those games. So I do want to do more as I'm able. Will I get more FPS in games if I overclock my i5 760 to 3.5 gigahertz because I'm having serious FPS issues on my PC? I have a 280X, and I think that's better than the GTX 760. Your 280X is a little better. If you're having bad performance and you're still running your CPU at stock clocks, your CPU is likely bottlenecking your GPU, and you will get better performance if you overclock. If you want to see if it's a bottleneck, download MSI Afterburner and run their on-screen overlay. That'll let you know how high your CPU is getting. If it's getting more than like 70% on every core, it's probably starting to bottleneck, and if it's hitting like 100% on every core, it's absolutely bottlenecking your GPU. Do consoles hold back games? That's kind of a real partisan question. I mean, I think they're asking it like in the right spirit here, but I don't think it's so much as consoles hold back games as developers try to aim for a wide range of hardware, and as consoles become older and older relative to newer and better PCs, it seems like they might be holding back games because the game can't just work on high-end hardware. It has to also work on the older hardware, which I personally think is a good thing, because I think it's unreasonable to expect everyone to upgrade their computer every couple years just to stay relevant and to be able to play new games, period. So I think it's important to support older games in some respect, even if it's at 720p, even if they can barely hit 30 FPS. Just having the ability for people with 5 or 6-year-old computers to be able to play a game at decent settings, I think is important. So in that case, I think consoles are actually good for gaming. Good because they force developers to optimize at least somewhat for lower end hardware, and good because if it wasn't for the extra millions and millions of copies being sold, some games wouldn't get made. CD Projekt Red has been very honest when people accuse them of downgrading The Witcher 3. They said, hey, first, I think their original vision has really cool aspects, like some of the lighting and things did look really advanced, but a lot of the character models I don't think looked anywhere close to as good as the final release, so I don't think it was a downgrade. I think things just changed. But they've been very honest that if they couldn't put this game on consoles, they wouldn't have been able to make the game because they needed that extra install base to sell copies. Most games sell better on consoles than on PC if it's a multi-platform release. That's just how it is. So if you want that to change, don't pirate so many games, and I don't know, buy more games that you're interested in. But the PC is a much more varied and large platform, so there are fewer people buying every new release because more people are playing older games or playing their huge back catalog, playing free-to-play games that aren't on the console, stuff like that. So consoles do hold back theoretical upper limits of game performance, absolutely, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, and I think it's good that optimization is being done for consoles and lower-end computers. What has been the biggest challenge for the channel so far? Time. Definitely time. Budget a little bit, but mostly time, because I have a full-time job. I work for myself, so when you work for yourself, sometimes you're super, super busy, and sometimes you're not as busy, but there's always things that need to be done. I'm married. I have a bunch of hobbies. I have friends I like spending time with. So finding the time to be able to do YouTube as a hobby is hard sometimes. And I've actually moved my work schedule around in the past couple weeks so that I'm working on YouTube stuff more in the morning, and then I'm doing more of my own work in the afternoon into the early evening, and then I have the rest of the evening to spend time with my wife and friends, and I don't have to feel like I have to rush off and leave them to go work on YouTube. So I'm working on optimizing my time as best I can, but right now I have tons and tons of ideas, and I run out of time more than I run out of ideas. So that's probably the biggest challenge. Also, the internet can be hard sometimes because not everybody's nice to you. And I know that sounds like whining, and I don't mean it that way, but sometimes it's hard to feel like super pumped up to do a video if like I made one and everybody just dumped on it for a while. Which is not most everybody on YouTube. Most of my subscribers, you guys are awesome, and you guys are super supportive, and you give constructive feedback, and I really appreciate all that. Normally it's when a video gets posted to Reddit, or some blog picks it up, or totally misinterprets the information, or something like that. Like the Potato Masher is a little bit of a unique project, and it's not for everybody. I don't expect it to appeal to everybody, and I never made it as a guide for how everybody should do this. I made it as a, here's something cool that I'm doing to see if I can do this challenge, and if you want to do it, I think it's totally doable, but it's not for everybody, and not everybody gets it. So having to wade through the people who are just mad about it or don't understand to get to the people who are honestly curious and want to know more information or want to have feedback or something like that, that can be a little bit difficult at times just because, again, there's so much noise out there. So trying to figure that out can be a little bit difficult sometimes, but overall it's very rewarding, and I really like doing it. Then, have you considered doing a video discussing options in PC games and how they tend to affect performance for people? Yes, it's something I've wanted to do for a while. I'd be interested in doing like optimization guides for a lot of new games. I'd be interested in doing like a master video, which I think what he's talking about like how does anti-aliasing affect your image quality? How does it affect your performance? How does shadow quality affect your image quality? How does it affect your performance? Who cares how much VRAM you have? Why does it matter? Like if you support OpenGL or DirectX 11 or DirectX 12, like why do you need a graphics card that does those? I think it would be cool to do videos like that. Like before, it's just time. Time is the big limiting factor. All right, guys, that was my first Q&A video. I realized that it has gone a little bit longer than I planned on. So if you watched the whole thing, thank you. If you didn't, sorry about that. I can be pretty long-winded sometimes. If you've watched my videos, you know that. But you can check all links out in the description for my Patreon and Twitter and all kinds of stuff like that. Thank you guys for coming out and watching this video. Thank you for submitting your questions. And thank you very much, sincerely, for supporting me, for supporting my channel, for being encouraging, for giving constructive feedback, and for just being here, because it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy doing it, and I like being able to help people if I'm able. If this channel or this project encourages people to try out PC gaming, or encourages them to upgrade their own PC, or to learn more about it, learn a new skill, something like that, I think that's awesome. And the number of people who have written in and said they've built their own potato masher, or they've been encouraged to get into PC gaming because of this channel or the Casual Shenanigans Gaming podcast, something like that, that is really awesome. And I really, really enjoy it, and I really appreciate you guys. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And until next time, have a great day.